everyone, and welcome to the Changemakers podcast, where we chat with interesting and engaging individuals here and far about change, making change, living change in their own lives, how they've experienced unimaginable change, and innovative ways people uplift the lives of others. We chat about triumphs over tragedies, mindset matters, and how we live out our life's purpose inspirationally. So please join us to be inspired and empowered to be the change you want to see in this world. You know, we can all be change makers in our lives. Here's to the change you're about to bring forth. We want to welcome everyone today to another episode of our Changemakers podcast. I'm Kimberly Rice, Chief Changemaker of Changemakers, and I could not be more delighted than to welcome my guest, Emily Griesing. Is that correct?
You did perfectly. Yes.
Yes, Emily Griesing. Today to chat with us about change making and what that looks like in her world. So welcome to our show, Emily.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Now, you know, I have followed your career for years. I have admired your path. I've known your mom forever. And, you know, it's just been interesting to see kind of like one generation to the next. But let us just jump right in here today. Talking about change making. And why don't you share with our listeners a bit about yourself, a few insights into your professional journey, and what makes your heart sing?
Sure. So there's a lot in that. I'll try to keep it pretty short. So currently I run a branding, marketing, and business development consultancy called Possible, as you can see. And I've been doing that for 7 years now. And I found my way to starting my own business a few different ways. One, I used to work at large agencies. And so I was working on market research and strategy for large brands that many, of us know the names of. Solving just their biggest business challenges. How do they reach a new audience? How do they launch a new product effectively? Where do they fit and stand out in the market? All sorts of big questions like that. And as you already mentioned, since you know my mother is an entrepreneur. So I definitely got exposed to that world and was, maybe I can do it too. And so 7 years ago, I left agency life and the large market research projects I was doing, and really realized that I could do it. I thought I could do it on my own, but I also really wanted to make more of an impact. That was something that was really important to me. And when I say that, I mean really being able to deal with stakeholders and people who make decisions. Because a lot of the work I had done with big organizations, it just is very slow to change. And sometimes it felt like my work was kind of going nowhere. And that felt very frustrating for me. So I really, really love working with entrepreneurs, CEOs, especially who have grown something or are growing something and trying to take it to the next level, especially if they're doing something new and disruptive in their industry and have something new and interesting to say or offer. So that's sort of my background. Things that I love to do kind of in that sort of same note as it relates to entrepreneurs is I'm very, very passionate about having and amplifying underrepresented voices. So whether that's women in business, whether minorities in business, members of the LGBTQ community, I want more thought leaders and subject matter experts to reflect, our diverse population here and in our communities. And so that's sort of a niche that I have. I work with all sorts of people, but I do have a very strong passion for that.
That's phenomenal. And in today's society here in the United States, we're so large that we must have one of the most diverse populations on the planet, just by virtue of the fact that we're so large. And
like we saw today, I mean, just today, the United States Supreme Court is knocking us back some years with striking out affirmative action in education, which is most disappointing. I hope that doesn't stand, but we'll see. So that's wonderful. So in the context of your business and the entrepreneurs that you work with, is there any one favorite thing, or is there something that you kind of have, learned over time that really kind of lights you up?
It's changed so much. And I think so many entrepreneurs or anyone who launches anything will say is, if you knew all you knew now, you probably wouldn't be here. So there was, I had certain areas of expertise and experience that I brought in when I started this, and things that I love. Like, I love writing, I love research, I love planning and strategy and thinking critically and being unique in a market. And it's funny now that I have a team and have worked on so many different things over these 7 years. What actually really gets me going is compiling talent, and really piecing it together to create something great for my clients. Because that's, there were things that I know I'm good at and I excel at, but what I've been able to produce, or what Bossable has been able to produce since having a team that has complementary skills or sees things differently or have varied perspectives, or also live across various parts of the country, like that's where I've seen the work that I am just the most excited about, the most proud of. I both mean, the visual things we've created, the brands that we've made and how they look and feel and sound. But then also, the outcomes we've built for clients, having them grow and reach new audiences or launch something new. Like, without the team that I have, I wouldn't have been able to see and create some of the output that I have, that I'm just so in awe of. So it's really, I've very much learned that expanding my skill set and expanding the people that I bring in to work on things just makes everything richer and more interesting and new.
Yeah, really, I don't think from a professional journey, and I love that. I love what you said. It's so aspirational, as well as inspirational, because when we are, I mean, both you and I both have had corporate experience as well as entrepreneur experience, and I used to say, corporations are where good ideas go to die, right? Because of the bureaucracy and the endless committee meetings and it to death and taking it up the chain, and then there's indecision, as contrasted to being an entrepreneur, where you can drive the change, and or you can say, this isn't going, you're not willing to step up, Mr. or Mrs. Client, this may not be the greatest fit, next. Right?
It's very freeing, for sure, but you realize, and I know you know this, that it's all on you. It's really like, those decisions you have agency over those decisions, but then you have to live with those decisions, whatever they happen to be, whether it's one, saying no, learning to say no, or whether it's adapting to areas that you're not used to, or different personalities within a client's team, whatever it happens to be. So it is wonderfully freeing, and that was something I definitely was looking for when I left sort of the corporate world. But I've also realized and been very humbled by that, like, this is me, and I need to step up. No one's going to do it for me. And I have to solve these issues and be creative and be resilient, because there isn't a fallback.
Exactly. And I don't believe in all the decades of my experience and career. And I also, like you, have agency experience. So, that whole collaboration with the creative team and the writing and the art, and then the account management, and then the business generation, which is a wonderful concept as far as collaboration. And then, you go into a corporation and, you've got silos of skill sets, which can be challenging to manage and drive change at the same time. But then as an entrepreneur, in comparison, to develop what we call a rock star team, is completely within our control. And the business model, which, maybe yours is this way, mine's this way, is, I've developed a tremendously broad network over decades, and we have dedicated team members dependent on the assignment. So we always bring in fresh talent with fresh eyes.
Oh, yes. Customization is a huge part of my brand.
Awesome.
I'm not a cookie cutter type of agency. Everything is tailored to that specific client, whether in their industry, location, certain type of offering, their unique story, a new thing going on with them, a change in the market that's related to them. So, and the same goes with a team, right? Just like you said, who do I think is going to be the best fit in my arsenal to suit this need? And this, whatever their goals happen to be. So I am very much, and actually, I think that, like you just said, it keeps things fresh. I see that a lot just in kind of the world of marketing, because I think it does have a sour taste for some, because I think many have felt burned or slighted by marketing people they've used, and it's such a big area. And a lot of people are just kind of churn and burn, and they give one way of doing things, they do it over and over, they don't really change it based on who they're offering it to. It's usually more affordable, not always. But then eventually, the client doesn't get what they're hoping for. So that's just something, in addition to service and closeness with my relationships, is also being really thoughtful about who does things and how we do it, and is this going to be the best fit for them. I really want to give them what I think will help most immediately, not just they think they need this, so we should do that.
Oh, Lord. And it's really
that sounds like what I'm talking about.
It's challenging, and I've been doing it for a few years, but I found it challenging both when I was working in-house at law firms, and then as an entrepreneur serving primarily law firms and lawyers, is what the client says that they need is not always what they need. And
yes.
Right. And so they don't really know. And I could have a PhD by now as far as how much time I've spent trying to educate. You really don't want to build a website until you have a brand. Right. And you don't want your web developer to be developing your brand. I mean, it's like, there is an order.
Yes.
On those times. And that's just a very simple example. I've had that happen at least 24 times.
Very familiar with it as well.
Then they're disappointed, and then they don't really, we didn't really get any clients. And I'm like, but this is just the starting gate, my friend, as far as when the website gets built or whatever the initiative is. And, so, going in and setting client expectations, explaining kind of where a particular client or firm may be in their business life cycle, where the strengths are, and how to leverage and optimize those strengths, and how your company or my company, can bring the greatest solutions and impact for the least amount of investment in the shortest amount of time.
Yes.
Sometimes it's just not possible. I mean,
very challenging to do that.
Yeah. And so, so to me, it starts with trying to educate the client, but then if the client doesn't really want to be educated, they just want it done.
Yes.
So that can be, that can have some uncomfortable conversations, which really, revolve around change making, because we all are on the same team to want to make change.
Yes.
But the approach from the client's perspective and from the service provider's perspective can be very, very different.
Yes. And that's something that just from other leaders that I follow and admire, and just even books that I've read, even from people I don't know, is that for me, and I agree with this in my own smaller, microcosm experience, is that amazing leaders find the people who have skills that they are not excellent at, and they listen to those people as it relates to those areas.
Yeah.
They're not the dictator, this is how it is, this is what it has to be. But especially if it's something that they know that there's someone else that really lives and breathes this area, listen to them. And it's not just us, right? I'm not just saying it from a marketing perspective. There's areas of me running my business that of course I didn't know or still don't, or I'm learning, and I need to bring on people where I'm like, so what do you think I should do? You are the expert. Like, I trust you. Tell me your guidance. And so I think that's sort of lines of mutual respect that are very important, especially when you're dealing with another entrepreneur. Is like, I don't come into your business and tell you how to do X, Y, or Z, because that's what you're great at. You came to me because you're trying to do X, Y, or Z, and you're not sure, or it hasn't been working, or yada, yada, yada. And this is my lane. So this is what I'm going to tell you I think that you should do. And if you don't, and there's always compromise and ways to meet in the middle. But if it's just sort of like, no, that's not what I want, that doesn't make sense. Like you said, sometimes it's just not the right fit, and they can just find someone who just executes their plan. But to me, that defeats the purpose of bringing on someone else, a different business. So that's kind of been my experience with it.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, it's really learning how to zero in and key in on people who are coachable, honestly.
Yes.
So much of the time, and this just, I've done a lot of study in positive psychology and the brain. And so it's just been years of learning and in following some of the intuition of the lessons that I've learned. But, oftentimes it can be understanding kind of what the challenges are from the client's perspective, but also the motivating factors and the pressures, because especially when you're in a larger organization or a high pressure organization, you are under pressure to produce quickly.
Yes.
And, sometimes the things that, are going into building a business or prosperous business, sometimes there's not a lot of shortcuts. And so you're going to, go all in and invest to the process, or you're going to get those folks who say that they'll just, they'll do whatever it is that you tell them that you want to do, but it's not going to produce the results. And then you're going to, spend a lot of money and time and be disappointed. And then you're just that burn and churn. And so,
yes.
Right. Yeah.
And I think there's some misconception about, because again, marketing is huge. And there's so many different pieces and avenues, but there's this idea that, I just invest in this one thing, like my site or my email strategy, or nominating myself for awards or getting press, and then I'm going to get X, Y, or Z, when really marketing and promotion and building a brand is a consistent long game. It is definitely a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that can get lost. Just at least I've experienced some of that, where, where's the result? But like you said, it's a lot about building foundation and building a good foundation, especially if things have been done that haven't been super effective in the past. A lot of it's cleaning that up and making things clear before you can even think about growth. So that's just another thing that I really like to emphasize, is that this is something that you invested and you continue to slowly put energy in, and also pivot on, right? So this is, okay, we're going to be doing this, we're just going to do this indefinitely. It's always evaluating and looking at the data and seeing what the outputs are, and then making tweaks based on the information that you learned. Like even I have a client I've been working with for over a year now, and we've done a lot of different things. And we actually did a really big social media campaign this year that went really well. A lot of people saw it. They were really happy with the outcome, but we realized from it that we might need to be making some tweaks to their overall messaging based on what we learned. And they're like, oh no, now, we did this last year. And I'm like, it's a constant evaluation, where you were last year, where the world was last year, what your audience was doing last year. Those things change. So it's not stagnant, one and done. That isn't what I found to ever be effective as it relates to promoting yourself, your brand, whether you're an individual or a huge company.
Absolutely. Amen, sister. Change, right? And we have to keep our eye on the ball of what are all the data points and the data analytics. And it's
Yes.
never been easier. I mean, I started, my marketing career back in I have to say, the late 80s, before social media, digital, internet,
Mhm.
all that stuff. And,
Yep.
there were, print ads and still, some of the same tactics that we use today. And so in some
Yep.
terms, it's never been easier to grow a prosperous business because of all these additional tools. But then on the other flip side of the coin is that there's so many choices and there's so many
Yes.
tactics. It's almost like a shell game or a puzzle of how to put all those pieces together effectively, over a long term. In my business, KLA Marketing Associates, we have a saying that the secret sauce to business success is the consistent, persistent, massive amounts of action over a prolonged period of time.
Isn't that the case with everything? Like if we really think about it, and maybe that's just cultural, of just in our country at least, is just like get it like as soon as quickly as possible, fast, 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 fix, overnight fix, lose weight in 30 days, whatever it happens to be, right? This band-aid solution that you don't have to put in much work, but you can buy this thing or do this course, and then suddenly your whole life is going to change. And like realistically, to make anything stick, it's just like training for a marathon, like piece by piece, step by step. Yeah, I mean, my mom even got me a card that says something like that, like little by little, step by step, you make it happen, or things happen, magical things happen, or something along those lines. And I have it still. And
Yeah.
I've always loved it when I'm like have self-doubt, which I do all the time, or I'm just dealing with general stressors of running a business and having a life. Is
Right.
just like step by step, piece by piece investment, not just money is a big part of it, but so is time. So that's another, like, I think key piece where I think about the best projects and the ones that I just have felt have gone so well, or with clients that I just admire so much and I'm so proud of, is that it was a combination of not just willing to make a financial investment, but also time. Like you can bring on us, but we don't live and breathe your business. You do. And without that input and, making time to just catch up, or I have this idea, what do you think? Or where are we going with this? Did you see this new news thing came out? What does that mean for my business? That's huge. Because I think there's also a like, oh, I can just throw money at it and then I can just set it and forget it.
Mm.
That's another approach that can happen. And then there's like, well, where's the results? I'm like, well, where were you? We're pulling things, but without you or, your team, your leadership team or whoever it is as the through line, it won't resonate in the same way. So it's again, more beyond money for sure.
So let's talk a little bit about change making. You are, is it safe to say you're under 40?
Yes, it is.
Okay, well, I don't want to. I just want to be respectful.
No, and I no problem. I'm 33. No, no problem sharing my age.
And I think it's great. So you've been in business for 7 years. So you were 26 when you started.
Yes, which is insane.
It is insane. I mean, because it's like I started my business when I was 45, the first business, and it took me that long to being in house and then kind of whatever. But think about when you started in your agency businesses, as far as an employee, and then the decision to step and transition and pivot. What was part of your mindset, and how did you gear up to make that kind of change?
It was terrifying. I guess what I realized, and this is a common millennial problem, and I know Gen Z even more so, is just I was in school. It's all I knew. I was a very good student, always worked very hard. And I got into, the real world, and I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea what to expect. I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea what my goals were. But what I did know is that so many of the jobs that I had left me feeling empty. And just very like feelings of dread. And I was like,
why was? I mean, was it working that your values were not aligned with the company you worked for, or did it have to do with human resources? And
I mean, I think definitely some of it had to do with, people I worked for with that were very challenging. But then also just like some of the work itself, and they weren't all like this, and each had
Sure.
different pieces that I did get good things out of, especially looking back now. But I think just it was almost like guttural, like it wasn't always just rational. It was just this feeling of like I'm getting up every day and like putting on this costume that feels very like formal and stuffy and not me. And why am I doing this? And I think that's beyond just like the types of jobs I had and more about like corporate and working a 9 to 5 in general. And I know I'm by no means the first person to mention this, but it can just feel very stifling, after being at this liberal arts college and taking all these creative courses and meeting all these cool people, and just I knew I had to work. I was always a hard worker, so that was never the problem. And I always did well. I mean, I was always up for promotion or getting bonuses or whatever, but I just like my heart wasn't in it. Like I just didn't feel the meaning. And so and I think I also just felt like if I have more control over who I work with and what I do, I will start to get rid of that dread.
That's
And at least feel invigorated in some way. I felt like the fire in me was like just dwindling, and I was so young. It just felt like, is this going to be it forever?
That's a horrible feeling when you get to that point of, oh, this is it.
Yeah.
This is it. So, right. So when you started making that, change and outlining and frameworking what you wanted your business to look like, what were some of the important components that, having been able to contrast your professional experience up to that point, what did you want to see change? How did you want to?
So great question. Some of what, again, that a little bit I mentioned before, I had been working with the clients I had been working with were ginormous, enormous, the beasts, Yeah. And the lack of change and impact and the bureaucracy of it all drove me nuts. I was like, I'm, working so hard and putting these 100-page decks together and analyzing all of this information. I'm just like, is anyone even using this? Like, is anything even being applied? Because then they'd come back, a few months later with their next year budget and be like, okay, so we're going to do part 2. And I'm like, well, we answered all these questions. Did anything change? So with that, like I said, and I still stand by this, even though now I am taking on larger clients, because now I feel like I have more of a team to do that appropriately, is like, I really want access to decision makers.
Yeah.
That is huge. Not just because, it's some ego thing, like I want the boss and I don't want to work for anyone else, but really like, if we're going to be making and thinking about big changes, I want someone who can move processes forward. Right. That's very frustrating. And like, I want to help, like, let's do things. Like there's so much we can do. Let's do it. And when there's just so much like waiting and all these conversations, and then all these people have to weigh in all these meetings, it starts to get back into that, what you were saying earlier, where it's just this like turning around, but nothing's really happening. So that was huge. I was like, I want to work with entrepreneurs, or I want to work with people who are like, I'm deciding things about me, whether sometimes it's people who are just working on their personal brand, like we were just talking about, they could be in a law firm, a partner at a law firm, or they could be, or in an accounting firm, or a doctor, or whatever. They don't necessarily have to be the owner of their own business, but they are in some way taking ownership of their own brand and their own trajectory. So that was super important to me. And that's just been huge. Like, just things happen so much quicker. I really get the essence of the why so much easier when I work with the leadership team, and like what really drives them and what they really care about, that you could never get if you're working with someone many levels down in a totally different place, in a totally different department, who's just really just doing their job because they have to. So that was a huge part. Also, I knew I didn't want to only do market research. So that was my background. And that certainly informs why I started Bossful, and also why I don't even necessarily call myself an agency, because I think I do a lot more beyond just execution. But I also knew I wanted to be more comprehensive. So, I didn't have any experience, building websites when I started, launching social media campaigns, like creating huge marketing plans and decks, for new businesses. Like I could apply some of my old skills from that, but I really wanted to see more of a comprehensive picture, because another thing about marketing, which I know you absolutely understand, is it's a web. You don't just do one thing in a silo and then that gets going. You want everything to be impacting and working together as a unit. So that was another huge piece that was super important to me. I was like just involved in this research plan. I never then got to see anything that happened with any of that. So I always kind of felt like left unsatisfied with my work. Or, oh, wow, now I get to see they made this thing. Finally, some of them would launch the product that we researched, but I never got to see and be part of that process. So those are kind of two main, and the third, which is what I said a big about my passion, was just I really wanted to work with a more diverse population. I was just very interested in that. I went to an all women's college. I have friends of all different backgrounds. I've lived in many different cities, people who speak different languages, different religions. Like that's just important and rich to me in my life. And I wanted to be able to do that with the people I worked with as well.
Which is excellent. I mean, because it gives you such a broad exposure and the ability to apply across platforms and demographics and psychographics, which is so important. So let me just ask you a couple more questions as it relates to change. And that is, as a female entrepreneur, do you think you have experienced it differently than a male counterpart?
There's no question.
Yeah, I was just being kind.
You and me have talked about this separately, but and I have so many friends, women in business and women entrepreneurs. I was on the phone with one a little bit two actually before I got on the phone with you, or on this call with you. So it is inherent. There is no debate. And in a way, maybe some of that is also my choice. I do choose to join women's groups. I do choose to be part of certain organizations that diversity is a big asset. Because I actually had a new team member come to me, and I actually loved this question. I thought about it a lot. She's like, what if someone comes to you and they have very different, sort of ethics and, ways of seeing the world than you? She said it in a very polite way. And kind of than mine, because I am very vocal about diversity and I am very vocal about a lot of issues as it relates to women in the workplace and just diverse groups in the workplace. And I was basically like, I take it on a case-by-case basis, but I think like attracts like I really don't have a lot of situations where people come to me and I'm like, wow, this seems like this doesn't really align with what I'm trying to promote. I think it kind of happens naturally in that way. But I mean, there's no question. And this statistic I'm pretty sure, and don't exactly quote me on it, but it's something like only 1% or 2-3% of women entrepreneurs hit the $1 million mark. Yeah. And that is a disturbing stat that I hope to be the exception to that. That's a goal of mine. But that speaks for itself. Any woman, there's something going on there, because we also know that more women are starting businesses than any other demographic, especially minority women. Right. So Black women, Hispanic women, or Asian women are starting businesses at exponential rates compared to other groups, especially if we're breaking down by race and gender. So there's plenty of businesses out there. There's plenty of women doing this. So what's going on here? We know it has to do with funding and access and, lack of childcare and all of these things. So without getting too deep into it, there's not a single woman who it does not impact unless no one knows that it's a woman behind the business, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's, but we all keep trying. We all are taking the steps day by day. To me, the differentiator is having the courage to summon the courage. You may always, have all kinds of fears or whatever, but really the quote that I always refer to is everything we want is on the other side of our comfort zone. And, and finding summoning the courage. We have it inside of us. It's just a matter of, will we summon it to move ourselves forward and what we say that we want. Some of
Yes.
us do, some of us don't. Some of us, have to figure that out over a longer period of time. So, but I applaud you for being where you are at this stage in your life and in your professional journey, because I can only imagine how exhilarating it is, as well as probably terrifying, because you don't have 25 years experience, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. There's just, it's a highs are high, lows are low, as many of us know in this journey. And it can be lonely. There's no doubt. And that's actually something I was thinking about when you were talking or asking the question about being a female entrepreneur, is a silver lining that I've seen, despite all of the bias, both subtle and blatant, that goes on, and discrimination that goes on, is that I have just been so encouraged in two ways, both by the network of women I've been able to connect with, of all ages and all backgrounds. It's so beautiful and so uplifting and incredible. And I know that that's changed a lot, because as I talk to people of various generations about what that's like. And I think women are a lot more coming together, seeing each other as allies and supporters rather than as competitors. So I've been seeing that a lot more, and I have a very strong network of even women just like you. We're in the same space, and here we are. I admire you. I would love to work with you. I'd love to support one another. So I think that's a huge change. But then also, and we need the men on board in every way, our partners, right? Our family members, our friends, our neighbors, also our fellow people in business. And having the men who hire me and support me means a ton to me. So it's both. And yes, huge change that we can't even begin to talk about needs to happen. But I do see beacons of hope, and people seeing me in a way that I've been shocked in a pleasant way at how they've been receptive towards me.
That's wonderful.
So that's something.
That means the world. I mean, there are certain things that you just absolutely money cannot buy.
Yes, 100%.
Showing up, just continuing to show up day after day, week and year after year, to be the serious minded person, warm-hearted person that you are. To me, I don't think that there's anything more of a measure of success. It's not about the dollars, the dollar signs. Of course, that comes when you do all the other things right.
Sure. Yeah. And I one of the calls I just had was with, again, another female entrepreneur who I admire very much, who's had several businesses, some that have done well, some that haven't. She's learned a lot, and I really respect her. And she's like, yeah, this is about the life I want to build, not the money I need to make or the business I need to build. But what do I want my life to be like? And that's definitely how I see this. If I was just trying to make money, I probably wouldn't have started a business. Right. We could have, tried to work our way up in whatever organization, or but that wasn't fulfilling for me. So I think that that's a huge thing that I love in the network of entrepreneurs that we have and we build, is that common greater goal than just more, is having a rich life. What does that actually look like?
Well, that's absolutely fantabulous. You are wise, well beyond your years. And that some of these things that we're chatting about took me decades to figure out. And, but I think it's just inherent that we are all on our own individual journey at the right time in the space.
Yes.
So this has been phenomenal. Thank you so much, Emily. I so have enjoyed this conversation, and I certainly want to give our listeners an opportunity to connect with you directly. So what is the best way for our listeners to connect with you?
Yes, I would love that. So I try to make things very easy. I am in branding. So my business is called Bossable. So it's possible with a B. And my site, as well as all my social media handles for my business, are It's Possible, or itspossible.com is my website. But also I am very big LinkedIn user, so happy to connect with folks on LinkedIn, talk about anything that we've covered today, whether it's marketing, building a personal brand, to just entrepreneurship or launching a business or being a working woman. So thank you so much for having me. And it's always fun when we chat. So thank you.
Well, very good. Thank you. I feel likewise. I just always love to keep my finger on the pulse of younger women professionals, just to kind of see where they're at. The world has changed, but some of us, we have some of the very similar values, and have had several similar experiences in the work of corporate life, and that doesn't seem to really change regardless of what.
Unfortunately, not enough. Yeah.
I'm optimistic because we women are going to take over one day. I don't know if it'll be my lifetime, but
it's already happening in certain ways.
Yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. But thank you, listeners, for joining us in for another episode of our Changemakers podcast. And as always, what we say, until we meet again, be the change that you want to see in the world. Take care.